a big development on the continent. The French are to bring back national service. Should we do the same? Let's get the views of Andrew Fox, Senior Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society and co-host of the popular Brink podcast. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Mark.
Yes, the French to reintroduce military service. Should we do the same?
Well, it's very expensive. That's the first thing I think we need to flag up, is if we're serious about doing this, it's going to cost a huge amount of money. Those recruited soldiers will have to be trained, housed. They'll need vehicles to travel in. They'll need uniforms to wear. They'll need weapons to fire.
Yeah.
And we currently don't have the stocks for all that. So it will need, if we decide to do that, a huge amount of investment from the government.
Of course. And where will the money come from? Do you think it would be good for the young generation to perhaps serve for a year or two in the military? Would it teach them a bit of discipline, a bit of community, a bit of belonging, some traditional values?
I mean, certainly I found all of those things in my time in the army. The question is what we'd use them for. I mean, if we're looking at Eastern Europe and NATO's eastern flank with Ukraine, it doesn't look realistic right now that we would deploy British troops in large numbers to go and defend Ukraine. They seem to be holding their own quite well as it stands. But one lesson we do learn is that should it come to that in one of our NATO allies, if they get invaded by Russia, it does require mass. And if we don't have any mass in the British Army, we have 69,000 soldiers, of which, including the reserves, no more than 23,000 are actually combat soldiers. Our armed forces are tiny, and anything we can do to build up our national resilience, should it come to the worst, is probably a good thing.
Rishi Sunak proposed this policy before the election, but it didn't really move the dial for him politically, did it? It didn't feel like a wildly popular policy.
I mean, they always say there's no votes in defence, and I don't think until you're actually at war, there are any votes in defence. People want schools, they want hospitals. They don't necessarily see the need right now for a huge British army. I think one variation of this that could be popular would be some kind of home service. Going out doing good deeds, cleaning up graffiti, adding to the community rather than being in uniform. That might be a very useful way of teaching some good life skills and some national pride to our young people. Not to mention the fact the biggest threat to us right now is things like sabotage, things like a bus of drones being driven across the channel and launched at, say, for example, Heathrow, and shutting down our national infrastructure. That's the real security threat. And having people on a sort of home-based resilience kind of recruitment drive might be a very good thing.
Now, my viewers and listeners would benefit from an end to the war in Ukraine, would they not, Andrew? Because if that war ends, you will gradually see a drop in the cost of wholesale energy prices, which will bring inflation down in this country and make it cheaper for my viewers and listeners to heat their homes. Plus, it would, of course, be an end to the tragic carnage that we've seen over several years. Is a peace deal in the offing? Are Donald Trump's hopes of some kind of sustained ceasefire before Christmas a little optimistic?
I think they are. I was on the front lines in Ukraine just 2 months ago, and you can see firsthand that appalling carnage and the toll it's taking on the Ukrainian people. But unfortunately, Mr. Trump's deal is so far from anything that would be remotely acceptable, not only to Kiev, but also to European leaders. That there needs to be a major rethink, and there is a long way diplomatically to go before they can reach a deal that's acceptable.
I mean, fair play to Trump. He's doing his best. He's trying to end this war. But the million-dollar question is, does Putin want peace?
Well, we've seen Mr. Putin sign and break a large number of deals over the last 10, 15 years. Sticking to peace deals is not something that he has shown a huge amount of willingness to do, and that really touches the core of this issue, and that is that any deal has to be one that is fully reinforced by security guarantees to make sure that Mr. Putin doesn't, for example, continue his operations in Transnistria, in Georgia, the incursions that we've seen in Poland, the arms caches that have been discovered in the Baltic countries. All of these things point towards a Putin that is expansionist, confident, and keen to take this fight forward in future. And the guarantees have to be there to make sure that doesn't happen.
So how does this play out, do you think, Andrew? I mean, do you think we'll get good news by next year? Could this be the forever war?
Potentially. Look, there are certain red lines that can't be crossed on both sides, and unfortunately, they're not mutually compatible. Mr. Putin needs to come away from this war with something he can sell as a win after the enormous cost to the Russian economy and the sheer huge numbers of people from Russia who are now missing loved ones because they've gone to the front and been killed. Ukraine cannot afford to give up what they call the fortress belt of cities. That's the areas that Russia hasn't taken, but there is a strong defensive line. If that gets handed over to Russia, then of course that becomes an offensive line for future engagements in Ukraine. And until we get to a compromise somewhere around that particular sticking point, I think it'll be extremely hard to find a peace deal at the moment.
What do you make of Trump's leadership in this issue, given his success in Gaza?
Well, my personal take is that he hasn't had huge success in Gaza. I've been there 3 times during the war as well. I think he's frozen the conflict, but hasn't found a solution to the conflict. And there are a lot of challenges where I think that deal will fail. And by the same token, I find this deal is far too generous to the Kremlin. It could have been written in Moscow. It gives Russia everything they want and treats Ukraine, who are, of course, the invaded party here. It treats them as the losers, and it's very punitive towards them. So I think Mr. Trump's deals, if we go back to Afghanistan and the deal he made there, he doesn't have a good record on the international stage with peace deals, and this doesn't look like a good one either.
Andrew, this current administration here in the UK, following Wednesday's budget, don't seem to understand that economic prosperity and national security are critically interlinked. Is this government dangerous?
I think so. There are clear, credible threats at the moment to the UK's security. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Russian ships floating near critical underwater infrastructure. There is clearly an intent by our enemies to harm us, and defence needs to be taken seriously and funded. Not only because we have to defend ourselves if it comes to that, but also we are leaders in Europe, and prosperity comes from security. If we are so small and so ineffective that we lose that leadership role in both NATO and Europe when it comes to military matters, that is extremely damaging for not only our security, but also our prosperity.
Would you say, therefore, with the shark circling, with all these international threats and worries about our energy supply and all the rest of it, that maybe now wasn't the time to give welfare claimants a pay rise?
I mean, my personal take is that budget was horribly skewed towards the welfare budget. It was taking money from hardworking people and redistributing it to those who don't work. I think that sends the wrong message. I think there are better ways we could be spending our very limited amounts of national tax income at the moment. And this government's priorities are completely incorrect.
Andrew, thank you for your valuable time. Andrew Fox is a senior fellow at the Henry Jackson Society and the co-host of the excellent and rather compelling The Brink podcast.